Hi, I'm Jessica Salaji, publisher of thegeorgiavirtue.com. We're so excited to offer a compilation of videos this election season. The TGV Candidate Spotlight Series is an independent video feature produced with one goal in mind: providing voters with as much information as possible before they head to the polls. There's no agenda, we don't make endorsements, and we aren't beholden to any giant media corporation. The series is produced thanks to our advertisers and the generous donations made to the TGV Sunlight Fund and communities we cover. We extended an offer to all of the candidates seeking office this year, and to ensure the integrity of the questions and in fairness to all the opponents, every interview was recorded prior to the release of the videos in that race. For that reason, candidates who did not agree to an interview prior to the air date for their race will not be featured in this series. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget, you can find more content on this election cycle and much, much more on thegeorgiavirtue.com.
There's never been a better time to upgrade at Franklin Toyota. Hurry in and save big on our entire inventory of your favorite new Toyotas. All marked with the honest, transparent, and upfront pricing you've come to expect from Franklin. The price you see is the price you pay. No gimmicks and no games. Get it fast, get it fair, get it forever. That's the Franklin guarantee, because at Franklin, we're here for you. Visit us on Commerce Drive in Statesboro or shop our complete inventory online at franklintoyota.com.
Today we're talking with candidate for state court judge Michael Classens. Mr. Classens, thank you for taking the time to talk with us.
Thank you, Eric.
Why don't you just start by telling us a little bit about who you are, your background, things like that.
Well, of course, as Eric says, I'm Michael Classens. I'm reared here in Statesboro, Georgia, went to the public schools in Bulloch County, graduated from Statesboro High and Georgia Southern, then worked for a few years to save money up for law school. Was used to working. That's how I put myself through college and how I supported myself otherwise. Went up to Knoxville to go to law school at the University of Tennessee, and got married in between my first and second semesters of law school. Stayed up there, finished up. My wife is from Augusta, and she became homesick for Georgia and the coastline. So at the last minute, as I was studying for the Tennessee bar, we moved back down here. Had a job offer in Atlanta, but it was to start the Tuesday after Labor Day that year. So stayed here in Statesboro, went to help my old friend Bobby Smith at the building materials store, Smith Supply Company, where I had worked since high school graduation, and had to apply to take the Georgia bar exam. You have to have two lawyers sign your application, and one of the two that I asked to sign, who did sign, was Judge Francis Allen. And he asked me at the time if I had something to do, and I told him I was helping Mr. Smith out at the store. He said, well, why don't you work with us here at the law firm? When you finish up there, come down in the afternoon. The store closed at 5. So I'd walk down the street every afternoon at 5. They had a little basket there with work for me to do. I'd pick up the work. I'd stay up there at the office on North Main and do the work. And then the next morning, I'd get up, go to work at Smith Supply at 8, do the same thing over again. It got late in the summer, and it was time for us to leave. And I went to tell Judge Allen, this is it, I'm on the way. He said, have you ever thought about being a lawyer here in Statesboro? I said, well, not really. He ends up convincing me to stay here. He matches the pay, and that is a decision that I've never regretted. Now, that was some 38 years ago, and passed the bar exam, was sworn in as a member of the bar in June of '85, and began with that firm, which was called Allen Brown Wright and Edenfield at the time. Over the course of the next several years, there were some shake-ups, but ultimately in '96, I resumed practicing as a partner with two of the lawyers that I had started with there, Gerald Edenfield and Susan Cox, and we practiced from that building on Savannah Avenue right up until 2017, something in excess of 21 years. And then I came over here to be a sole practitioner in late 17. During these 37 years, I've been privileged to learn from masters of the craft. I've been in courts in better than 70 of the 159 counties in the state. We had a statewide practice, and we practice in every field of law that you can imagine. Civil cases, criminal defense, you name it, we've done it over those years. Personal injury, contract disputes, what have you. And so with that depth and breadth of experience, I feel as though that's what we want. It's what I've seen in the judges that I've practiced before and whom I have admired from the floor. And it has always been what I thought you want in a judge in any court. The State Court of Bulloch County is a court of general civil jurisdiction, with the exception of domestic cases, divorce law, and misdemeanor criminal cases. I've done everything in both of those categories that it's possible to do as a lawyer in general practice.
Tell us a little bit about how you view the job of the state court judge.
The state court judge, like any judge in any court, is not there to be an advocate for either side. Of course, I've done that on the floor as an advocate for citizens. Now, I'm asking to have this spot because I think the object that a judge should aim for is pure justice. Now, I realize, as someone once said, we're going to aim for perfection. We won't make it, but on the way, we'll hit excellence. And I think a judge owes it to the citizens that he or she serves to come into a courtroom not just impartial and with an open mind, but also with a background of experience. So to speak, you've walked a mile in their shoes. I've been there. I've represented folks who have the kinds of problems that you're going to have in state court. And so I think that a judge should approach that job with an open mind, but mainly with a good deal of compassion and empathy. Now, don't misunderstand. When somebody breaks the law, there's nothing at all wrong with punishing them for that. But even at that stage, if it is established by several of the means available, that the individual before you has committed the crime, a judge has options at his or her disposal with which to impose a sentence. And I think there's a tremendous number of young folks who come through the state court, and there is an opportunity there to steer those young people in a direction that will make the otherwise negative experience of state court a positive experience for them. I'm very excited about that possibility. I think after 37 years of practice, Bulloch County has given me everything that I have. I want to use those 37 years on this bench to give back on a much broader and deeper scale by seeing to it that justice is done, but with empathy, with understanding, and with compassion.
So why do you want this job and why now?
I think that it is an appropriate way to cap off a career, so to speak. I think that I still have all my faculties. I feel as though I'm still capable of, as they say in sports, turning on a fastball. But I know that that's not going to remain the case indefinitely. In the past, when I've been asked about things like running for a judgeship, I've declined for a number of reasons. One of them being, I didn't feel as though I had at those points acquired the experience and the wisdom to be the kind of judge I wanted to be, and more importantly, the kind of judge I think that people in a community deserve to have. Now I feel as though I have reached a point where I can apply that experience and those experiences that I've had in the practice of law, and also the experiences I've had in what we call the real world, the work experience, the association with my fellow citizens over all these years. That, I think, equips me to essentially say thank you to Bulloch County by serving in this position as, let's say, the capstone of a long career.
So obviously the past couple years have changed basically every profession. With the COVID-19 pandemic, how do you see, how have the courts in Bulloch County handled that?
I think the courts in Bulloch County as a whole have been very careful, very diligent, very safety conscious. Each court has approached the issue in their own unique way, but I think every court has done everything reasonable to protect citizens, litigants, lawyers, staffers. I mean, this is a serious situation that required folks to pay attention and to cooperate. I think all the courts here have done well. I'm not a big fan of remote video, Zoom, webcam hearings, but I recognize that we've been forced into the necessity of that over the last couple of years. My hope is that we're on the upside now, and that while who knows what the future may hold, I think this immediate crisis has passed and we can all get back to business as usual, perhaps with some residual safeguards against any kind of risky practices.
How about the backlog that's been created by COVID with, with trials being delayed and just, a slight increase in the number of cases? How do you view that being?
Well, I view it as work that needs to be done. And I know all the judges locally, and they're not the only judges I know, but I've practiced as a lawyer with every single one of them at one time or another, whether we were on the same or opposing sides. And I know that, as far as I can tell, they're going to go to work, do the work, and get the backlog handled. It's the same as I'm going to do. It's the same as what I've done my whole career. There's an amount of work to be done. Dig in, get the work done. If you fall behind, which we have in 2 years, well, then you just got to catch up. You got to work a little extra. And that is an important thing to remember. In the private practice of law, that is exactly what you do. Being a lawyer in the private practice is not a 9-to-5 job. You don't punch a clock, you don't go home at 5. You go in, you've got an amount of work to be done, you stay until you finish the work. Sometimes it means being up at the office until midnight. Sometimes it means coming in before anybody else in town is awake. But that's what you do. It's something that we have done for decades and something that I'm well familiar with. That's the way, and the only way, you address a backlog of work. You dig in, go to work, get it done.
So with the number of transient student population that we have in Bulloch County, a lot of the people that come through the state court are going to be hopefully one-time offenders. Do you think the court's properly equipped to handle youthful offenders?
Well, I'm not sure how to interpret the question. I think that the laws and the rules that apply to state court are in place to afford the state court judge ample discretion to address the youthful offender who is very unlikely to ever again run afoul of the law. I also think the court has tools at its disposal that can help increase the chance that that individual will not run afoul of the law. The consequences when you talk about misdemeanors to someone who's on the outside looking in may not seem that severe, but for many years I have fielded 1 or 2 calls during the course of a year from someone who was a college student at Georgia Southern, had a drinking offense or a misdemeanor of some other sort, and now wants a job, but has a problem because of that conviction. And I've gone to court, persuaded judges to come up with an alternative treatment, and we've, I think, had good success at clearing the little road bump out of the career path that these young folks are on. Point is, the state court judge has the opportunity to avoid placing that pothole in the road in the first place. And that's something that I'm very much interested in doing in every case where it's appropriate.
So do you think that state court in Bulloch County should have something like a pretrial diversion program?
I absolutely do. Pretrial diversion programs have proven to be a very good method of addressing just exactly what we're talking about with youthful offenders or even older offenders, folks who can demonstrate in the record that this, whatever it may be, is an aberration. Folks deserve the opportunity to prove that that's not me, I can do better. And we have the opportunity to create a pretrial diversion program with the cooperation of other folks in the system that will really accomplish that goal.
How do you measure success in a judicial office?
That's an interesting question. I don't know if there is a kind of a statistical way to measure success because you're dealing with human beings, you're dealing with lives, and it may be that upholding the standards that are set in our U.S. and state constitutions and affording those protections to everybody that comes before you, and then applying the law in an unbiased and equitable way may be the only way to define success as a judge. Now, I don't know that I've ever met a judge who was perfect or who said, I'm perfect. Judges are people. Judges make mistakes the same as the rest of us do. But I don't think success can be measured with numbers. For example, how many years of prison time have you doled out to people? To me, that doesn't sound like a good measure of success because it's a sad thing. The fact of the matter is there are people who deserve whatever happens to them. But is that really a success? Is a number that represents the fine revenues? Are you successful if you collect more fines than anybody else? I don't know. I think those are awfully shallow and hollow numbers to depend on. Moving cases is probably as close as you can get to a statistical measure. You know, were there 100 cases filed in a given period and we managed to bring 90 of them to conclusion? But even if you use that, there's no grade scale, like 90%, 80%, 70%. So I don't know. I think if at the end of the day, you can look back on the day's work and say, I did as well as I could, that probably is as close as you can get to defining success as a judge.
So there have been a lot of judges in Bulloch County and in the Ogeechee Judicial Circuit. Is there any particular judge, and I think you touched on this previously, that you would seek to, model yourself as a judge?
Well, in the Bulloch State Court, of course, I mentioned that I first began to practice the law with Judge Francis Allen.
Right.
He was succeeded by Judge Robbie Turner. Now, at that time, the state court was a part-time court. Mm-hmm. So both of those individuals were able to not only be the state court judge, but also to maintain a law practice. Then Judge Gates Pete succeeded Judge Turner. He was succeeded by Gary Michael, and at this point, the Bulloch State Court became a full-time court. So if you want to compare apples with apples,
Yeah.
you pretty much have
Right.
Judge Michael for the comparison. And Gary, who I knew from the time when we were children, grew up knowing, and I think of him as a good friend of mine, was a fine, fine lawyer, and one of the most able judges before whom I've ever practiced. If you look for a model, Judge Michael would be a pretty good one to try and match. But aside from that, I've practiced before judges all over the place, and there are bits and pieces that each of those judges put that I'm going to try to amalgamate into kind of an ideal whole.
Is there anything else you'd like people to know about you before they cast their vote on May 24?
Well, I really don't know what else I could tell folks. I've lived my life here. Folks who have known me for the 60 plus years that I've been here in Bulloch County by now know who I am and have formed their ideas about that to the point where I wouldn't insult them by trying to pretend to be something else. I am just as you see me. I've worked, I've grown up, I've been friends with so many people. I've had the privilege of helping thousands and thousands of Bulloch County citizens, one at a time, through very, very difficult times in their lives. And I think if you know me, you know that I am passionate about what I do. I love what I do. I'm going to miss it if I'm fortunate enough to be asked to serve on this court. But I'm going to go into that courtroom, if I am elected, as the exact same person that I am now. I don't know a different way to be. I treat people as I would like to be treated, which I think is a fairly good rule to follow. There is a book of some couple of millennia's standing that includes that rule in it. That's not all there is in that book. But if you have a lot of things on your mind and you need just one rule to remember, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, is a good rule, and it's easy to remember. I've practiced that philosophy from the time I was old enough to know what the word philosophy meant, and I don't see me ever stopping. There is a place in this world for justice and fairness. As our state seal says, wisdom, moderation, and justice. I'll defer any comment about myself on the wisdom category. But I do believe that my goal and the goal of every judge is and ought to be to administer justice as Lady Liberty with her blindfold on.
And if people would like to learn more about you or get in touch with you, where can they do that at?
They can go on the Facebook page, which is Elect Michael Classens State Court Judge. They can telephone us here at the office, where the number is 912-243-9234, or they can swing by here at 1 Crescent Avenue in Statesboro, and I will certainly be happy to see them if I'm available. I'll answer whatever questions anyone has for as long as they want, consistent with my obligation to serve my existing clients. But I'm an open book. I don't have any secrets. Come, talk to me, phone me, ask me the questions, send them to me on email, michael@classenslaw.com. I'll even respond to those. I'm not the world's most technologically sophisticated individual, but I do from time to time open email, and I am able to type. So all I can say is if there are questions you have that are holding you up from making a decision on where to go in this election, who to vote for, call me if you think I can help, and I promise you, you will get an honest answer from me.
Well, thank you for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thank you,
Good
Eric.
luck.
I appreciate you coming down here and talking to me. It's a little bit warm, but
Yeah.
I think it's well worth it.
All right, well, thank you.
You're welcome.